Hi, my name is Emily, and I'm going to try some experimentation. I've been getting some constructive criticism about my voice, how I come across, from being monotone, showing no excitement or enthusiasm. So it's a process. I identify as female. I still have a male voice. I did have surgery for vocal cord, but I couldn't continue with the voice lessons. The surgery was successful. I had it at Mount Sinai, and I had a wonderful surgeon, uh, and he said it was a successful surgery, and I know it was. Dr. Mark Corey was the surgeon, very professional. That actually was my first introduction into surgery before, uh, well, actually, my very first surgery procedure in my male to female transgender journey. Um, I feel bad that I can't seem to alter my voice to sound more feminine. I seen some videos, and obviously they said you have to drink lots of water, you can't be dehydrated. And it seems like it's like a way that they can project. But I've tried the mechanics, so to speak, for lack of a better word, as to how exactly they're able to do that. So I don't know anything about how to make your voice to sound more feminine. I took voice lessons, but they got out of hand, too expensive between electrolysis, voice lessons, medications, doctor appointments. It gets out of hand. And then you start wanting to do other surgeries. Like in the very beginning, before I got prescribed female hormones and testosterone blockers, I was considering facial feminization surgery. But when I saw the rundown of the costs, I said thank you very much. I bought some facial creams, and that was it. And I actually met with one of the premier surgeons that performs that surgery. He's in Massachusetts, near Boston, and I know other transgender women who've done their facial feminization surgery with him. His name escapes me for the moment. If I think of it, I'll mention his name. Um, but he's expert in the field, and he's up in Massachusetts with his wife. They both practice. So I'm not that concerned about the voice. I mean, I get by except in phone calls, but in public, the way I dress, the way I present myself, my mannerisms are all feminine. So I really don't have a problem. So I'm pretty much okay with the way I look and the way I feel. You know, I always knew at one point in my life I would have to make this decision. And I truly wanted to have a normal life. I did. I wanted to try to get past this. I couldn't understand why I was drawn to feminine clothing. I talked to my therapist. I've had so many over the years. And the one I'm going to right now, he's good, but he's tough. he's got to be tough because he was a former police detective in New York City. So he's tough. And he's trying to get me to look at the flip side of surgery, the cream of the cream of the top, or whatever you say it is, the creme de la creme of male to female transgender surgery is bottom surgery. So he's trying to get me, and I guess I'm going to check it out because I promised him I would. And it's no joke when you do have bottom surgery, male to female, because once that surgical procedure is done, there's no going back. And that's what my therapist is concerned about, especially with all the recent trauma I've been experiencing, particularly with the car accident that I had a couple of weeks ago. So he's concerned about my mental, and he had shown me stories where there were male to female transgender people who regretted the surgery after, and in some cases, not all, but in some cases they actually, if you could even do this, they retransition back to their birth sex. So the therapist I now go to is trying to make a point that, okay, you may desire this kind of surgery. You may have wanted it since you were a teenager, which I told them I was waiting for since 16. And I was dressing in feminine clothing, or trying to, when I was young at 3, when I was curious and I saw how pretty my mom was. But I told them I would check out the website. I do have a date set for my male to female transgender surgery, and it's already booked. I got the insurance approval. The date, September 10th, 2019. The facility, Mount Sinai. The program run by Dr. Jess Ting. I understand he's not one of the surgeons, or he may be, I'm not sure. Dr. Marcy Bowers, also not sure, but she's part of the whole training regimen for these doctors. And Dr. Rajveer Purohit, who is the surgeon that I've been dealing with. I've had my surgery postponed 5 times for various reasons. I wound up in the hospital psychiatric ward, spent weeks there. I was going through a very bad time, depression, worrying about my son. So, that was one of the reasons why it was postponed. Another reason it was postponed was because I had threatened suicide on the phone with my long-term disability insurance carrier, because I'm very much dependent on that due to my difficulties emotionally. I struggle with bipolar disorder, depression, which are legitimate mental related issues that, sorry with my hair, it's a bad habit, I know. It seems like every time I do a video I'm like playing with my hair. My hair is a little curly, but things growing up, I have all these crazy habits and stuff. It's part of me, I can't change it. Yeah, I was talking to my long-term disability insurance carrier, concerned about, that my insurance is going to continue, because the fact that I'm still here maintaining the house and paying the mortgage, despite the fact that I don't like this place anymore. Long Island is too expensive for me. I have a drain financially. I'm not complaining or anything, I'm just stating facts. You know, my money's tight. My wife takes care of the shopping and food expenses, while I take care of all the other expenses, household related, mortgage, and my wife does pay the heating bills. But I don't want to go into all that stuff. And then she's got her sister here with her 3 kids, and the sister does give me some money that she can. And, you know, I'm a good person. I would never say you've been here long enough and you gotta go. I'm not like that, you know. I'm a good-hearted person, so if people are struggling, it's really a struggle here. You know, I'm gonna let them stay because I don't want them living in the streets. And that's my own concern too, because my disability, from what I understand, won't last permanently. And unfortunately, I'm approaching 60, been out of the workforce for quite some time, despite the fact that I'm competent, professional, dedicated, you know. But I will admit I got burnt out on occasion during the long drawn out tax seasons and worrying about not giving my son the attention that he needs as an autistic child, and being upstate for a few years, that really messed me up because it was like I'm focusing on work. I'm working late in the office. I got this amount of stress on me. I'm trying to finish projects on a deadline basis. And then after you complete one job, then it's on to the next job. You know what I mean. You're all in this kind of world that we live in with work and stress and deadlines. I'm not saying anything new. Whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, a surgeon, an accountant, a CPA, a writer, we all have deadlines, and we have to learn how to deal with them. Yeah, because I'm worried about my financial situation. So, you know, and I'm insecure. So I'm like always worrying that I'm gonna have a crisis. And right now I am in kind of a crisis because I totaled the car. It wasn't my fault. My accelerator seemed to stick. I couldn't stop the car. Car in front, car behind. I'm in the right lane, cars to my left. Luckily I was in the right lane. I'm not trying to rehash this because I've said it many times before, but I'm trying to establish the reason why there's so much going on in my head right now. So if I kept going straight at roughly 40 miles an hour and my accelerator sticks or jams or whatever you want to say, and I have no control and I go to my brake and I can't stop, what the hell am I going to do? If I keep going straight 40 miles an hour, I'm going to hit this guy, probably kill him or her. Guy behind me is going to hit me. The impact is going to be so great. I was an engineering major, so the impact hitting is going to result in the same impact coming back, and it's going to project you at 40 miles an hour, the same speed of the car when you make contact. So I knew that was almost certain death. So I swerved to my right to avoid the car in front of me. And I said it before, but I'll say it again. I hit the curb, I went slightly airborne, and I was bracing for my death before impact. And the last image I had before I hit the trees was my son as I'm literally preparing myself to die. And then I hit the trees. My airbags deploy. I'm in a state of shock. Luckily, I had my seatbelt on, which I always do, which held me back. The airbags did what they're supposed to do. They protected me. They did push me back, so I did have some neck pain temporarily. I banged up my legs, I guess, against the dashboard or something, or the steering wheel. And I made contact, and then I realized I'm still alive, thank God. I reached for my phone, and I got the hell out of the car. I don't even remember if I turned the damn engine off. It's one of those push buttons, the Prius C from Toyota. But as I jumped out of the car, I was in shock. I fell to the ground. I started crying. And then there were like 6 or so cars that pulled over, come running towards me to see if I was okay. They called 911. The women were like surrounding me, trying to ease my mind, asking me if they could make a phone call on my behalf, call my family, and they stayed with me until the police and paramedics came. And, everything was surreal. Like, I couldn't believe what was happening. I just was like in a total state of shock. And I never had an accident like this, where you're actually preparing to die, and never had that happen to me. So it was terrifying. And the pictures I took one picture at the site before I was taken to the hospital, so I was fine. I could stand up, I could walk around. I wasn't hurt really, only superficially. Mentally though, I'm still affected by the accident, and it's part of me, I'm suffering from depression. I have bipolar disorder, I have suicide ideation. I've tried a few times, so I've been in the hospital for those attempts recently in January. 2 days before my birthday, and I was in 2 hospitals for 3 weeks, and then I went out to Stony Brook also. So I was at NUMC, then I was at South Oaks, and then like a week later, I don't know what happened. I was on the phone and I was like having a difficult time communicating to someone, and I have to stop it. Police get mad at me and they say you cannot threaten suicide. So I have to get into the right frame of mind. Because when you're talking to mortgage companies, you're talking to debtors, you're talking to people who are demanding payments, and all I can say is, look, I'm doing the best I can. I don't get paid till the end of the month. I'm not working. So I don't have a salary. I'm dependent solely on disability income, Social Security disability, and long-term disability. And they both pay out towards the end of the month. And you're expecting me to pay my mortgage at the first of the month when I have no cushion, because I spent all my retirement money when I first lost my job to preventing foreclosure. So I have no retirement money. As smart as I was, as professional as I was, and as proactive I was with saving money for the future, I had no idea that when I came out as male to female, transgender, that my life would just go down in a downward spiral. I was so naive to think that people would be compassionate, that people would be understanding, that people would be supportive. especially in New York City, that people would still treat you with the same level of respect that they did before you transitioned. But that was not the case. I got the cold shoulder from my sisters. I lost lots of friends. I lost my job. I was convinced to go to another job where supposedly they were willing to have me work there in their accounting department, accepting me as a transgender woman. And this was my first position where I would actually be working as a female. But that didn't last long. And the practice manager made it seem like I had nothing to worry about, you know. And I was set up. I said it before, but they never gave me a phone. They never let me participate in meetings. And here I am, one of the financial reps of the company. And they like limit my function. And they have these like bookkeepers teaching me what I should be doing, which really was bookkeeping work. So they wanted me to kind of develop a plan as to how to improve their accounting system. And I had to learn a new program, financial program designed for the medical field. I had to integrate that with their other facilities. They didn't give me any kind of training. It was like you go in, you sink or you swim or you sink. And I got pressure. The owner seemed to complain. And it was hell because I didn't have any direction whatsoever. They taught me things that I needed to do, and then they wanted me to be more elaborate and develop all these accounting systems when I really wasn't even really trained in the medical field. Sure, I went to a few doctor's offices and I did more like bookkeeping work, you know, checking accounts, making sure everything ties in, you know, doing all of that, because I never really got involved in audits. We did mostly compilations and write-ups. So as long as we knew the mortgages tied in, that the bank accounts were all reconciled, that their patient accounts were represented properly, and understanding their medical software accounting, you know. So I had limited experience. My experience at this CPA firm was geared mostly to small businesses like photographers, like antique shops. I had done accounting for lawyers' offices, some doctors' offices, as I said, radiologists, professional offices, but mainly attorneys, some doctors' offices, a veterinarian's office, photographers. I did lots of photographers, bookkeeping related work. I went to the city. I was in Long Island. I went to Connecticut, and I liked the firm. I was there for 10 years. The problem was that I got burnt out. I couldn't take the long hours anymore with the taxis, and I was stressed out with my son's autism, and it was a nightmare. You know, there was nothing I could do to help my son because I'm in the office. And there's an old saying that I'm sure all of you have heard. When you're on your deathbed, no one is going to regret that they could have spent more time in the office, you know. That was my problem. I spent more time in the office than I spent with my son, providing quality time with him And that same was with my dad growing up. My dad worked in a very difficult job as a construction worker. He would come home physically exhausted, emotionally drained. My mom would have a dinner ready for him. We didn't usually sit together. Sometimes we did, but he would eat, take a shower, and go right to sleep. And that was basically the contact that I had with my dad for most of my young growing up years. And I felt that I was repeating that same situation with my son unintentionally. Plus, my son is autistic, special needs, and I needed to be involved more in his life. And now he's 20, and it's like, it's too late. You know, how do I go back and make up for that? I can't. We can only go forward. So my son has problems, like I have problems, you know. We don't live in a perfect world. So all I can do now is to try to get him acclimated. He is still defying us with regard to having him placed in a group home. We do not even know what kind of group home to have him placed in. We don't know where there are group homes that will be able to help him. You know, Long Island, Nassau, Suffolk counties, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Obviously, we want him to be in a group home closer to where we currently live. You know, and people say I project too much, and I do, because there is a reality in life. And when you know you're struggling financially, and you can no longer afford to live in Long Island, like I'm experiencing, the things that come to your mind are, I gotta get out of here. I gotta sell this place. I gotta find a place. Certainly not in Long Island. I have to find a place somewhere down south where I can afford to live. You know, it's gonna be very hard though if my son gets placed in a respectable group home that we feel comfortable with, and it's in Long Island, and now I'm facing the dilemma, and my therapist gets really mad at me, but it is true, it is reality. So he's placed in a group home in Long Island, and then I have to find a place, let's say down in Pennsylvania. All right, Pennsylvania and Long Island isn't that far. But let's say I have to go down to Tennessee, or South Carolina, or Florida. In Florida, you don't even have to file state income tax returns. So let's say that happens, because that's the only places I can afford. And I have no idea even where I would find these places and what kind of waiting lists they have. And how the hell am I going to sell my house at the same time as having my son placed in a group home, as well as finding a place down south that I can lock on and commit to and make my first payment, usually first month, and then a security deposit for any damages, because I can't buy a house. I cannot take on a mortgage. And I hope to God that when I sell, if I'm able to sell this house, that I'm going to make enough money that if Maria and I go our separate ways, the money is split between us. But it has to be an amount that we can survive on. And I had paid for this house roughly $320,000 back in 2004. So we're in 2019. I still have 15 years left on this mortgage. My long-term disability is going to term out, if it's paid out to maximum, to 2026. and I'm going to try to find a way that they can pay it out indefinitely or a lifetime, but their policy states in black and white, and I didn't know, and I can't just say, oh, I'm disabled at 50. But after 50, or I'll say it this way, if you're determined permanently disabled before the age of 50, you're guaranteed a lifetime payout. However, you still have to be evaluated for the periods of time determined. But if everything goes well and you're still disabled and unable to work, you will be paid out for the rest of your life. I became disabled in 2013, and I was born in 61. So that's 61, 71, 81, 91, 01, 11, 12, 13. So I was considered disabled at 52 years old. So I missed the permanent payout by 2 years. And because of those 2 years, I'm only entitled, and I'm not like looking for a free handout. I paid for the premiums. Nobody knows if they're going to be disabled. It just happens, and that's why you take out insurance. You take out insurance for disability. You take insurance for life insurance. You take insurance for auto insurance. You take good insurance for your home. That there are reasons why you do that. So I was fortunate that I took out disability insurance and life insurance, but I didn't realize the fine print, and it wouldn't have mattered anyway, because I can't just say, oh, I'm disabled at age 50, because literally I was declared disabled in 2013, permanently disabled by psychiatrists, therapists, and doctors representing Prudential. So what that means is my payout, if it pays out all throughout the duration, will end in 2026. So now my disability's been extended to June of 2021. So between now and then, I'm hoping that Matthew set up in a group home, that Maria and I decide what our living arrangements will be. And what's going to happen with her family. You know, I mean, I'm helping them as best I can, but eventually they're going to have to try to find a place for themselves. Eventually, I'm not like going to say, you got to go. But realistically, what am I going to do? So if I need to sell, and this house is not a great house, you know. We don't even have a washer dryer room. We don't have a garage. We have one bathroom. You know, we have lots of clutter because we have hardly any closet space. We've had problems with the bathroom, the kitchen. We have no modernization whatsoever of bathroom or kitchen. I can't afford it. And the aluminum siding or vinyl siding, we can't afford to change. The only things that I could do, and it's years ago, so it has to be redone also, and I can't afford that. We did flooring. We did laminate flooring in the living room, the kitchen, the bedrooms, but they don't last forever, so realistically they would have to be changed. So when I spoke to the real estate agent, when I asked for an appraisal, and I told her I bought this house in 2004 at roughly $320,000 when I had my eyes set on a house in Bayshore that was much more beautiful, had 4 bedrooms, it had 2.5 bathrooms, it had a washer and dryer room, it had a business office, it had a little getaway place, it had 2-car garage, had a huge backyard, and the owner wanted to sell because they were moving down to Florida. And the problem was, when I spoke to family, like my sisters and all, the house was in Bayshore. So I assumed that my son would go to Bayshore School District. But unfortunately, it was Brentwood School District that he would go to. So my sisters were saying, no, you can't send your son to Brentwood schools, and and I didn't know really much about the Brentwood School District, but I know that Brentwood has problems, whereas Levittown is more like, I guess, a safer area, for lack of better words. But that house in Bayshore I wanted so much, for it had everything that this house doesn't have, and more. And it was selling for $275 when I paid here $275, $85, $95, $05, $15, $25. I paid almost $50,000 more for this house than that beautiful house, and I got certainly a lot less. So I was so upset. I was so angry. And it turned out that Levittown schools didn't even help my son, really. They just pushed him off to upstate. And they even had him out of school because of they complained about his behavior. So that really made me angry. And I used to go into these meetings. I couldn't afford an attorney to represent us. On occasion, I had a rapper, someone who goes to the meetings with you, an advocate. I had a parent-student advocate, but she was billing me at like $80 an hour, and sometimes we'd have to have multiple meetings, and it became expensive, and I'm not making a lot of money, and I'm the one paying all the bills. So I basically had to represent myself for my son. And I would literally go into these meetings. I literally broke down crying emotionally, saying that my son is not getting an education. You guys are pushing him out of the school. You are expelling him. You're not dealing with the fact that he's autistic. And I was screaming, I even got threatened that they were going to call the police and arrest me. That's how bad it got. But I was fighting for my son. And I was trying my best. But I didn't know the technicalities. I didn't have the savvy. I didn't know because I was motivated by my anger and upset and frustration. And it got me nowhere. And that's the problem with me. I am too wrapped up sometimes in situations that drive me crazy, and I feel I have no control. And now that same thing is happening with my car situation. I keep projecting, I'm worried now that they're going to blame me for the accident. I'm worried that they're going to determine that this investigation that I requested with Insurance's blessing is either going to be determined inconclusive, or they're going to determine that there is nothing definitively wrong with the accelerator and braking system. And then what does that speak of me? Because I was in that car and I knew what happened. I was there. I went to slow down. My brake wasn't working. The accelerator, something was wrong with. I couldn't stop the car. I couldn't control it. The only way I could avoid a catastrophe was to swerve to my right, knowing that I was going to go somewhere and I had no idea where it was. Luckily, it was trees rather than a building. Because if I hit a building at 40 miles an hour, I would have been killed instantly. Or if I hit that car in front of me at 40 miles an hour, I would have killed that person in the car and whoever else was in that car, and I would have got killed. And who knows what would have happened with the guy behind me and his wife. So I get so angry, I want to just scream. And people who know me don't see this side of me. They don't see this anger that I have when I flip out or when I threaten suicide on the phone. They don't see that because I'm under a lot of stress. And that is why I overdosed in January. Because I'm not treated with dignity. I'm not treated with respect. Nobody is willing to give me a chance. I don't have the wherewithal to start my own accounting practice because you need clients, you need the resources, you need an office, you need lots of things. Doing a few computer-generated tax returns is not going to pay my bills. I don't care if I have 100 clients, doing small business returns in some cases, or Schedule C's, which is part of the personal return. It's still not going to pay my bills. It's only going to pay a little bit. So people say, oh, why don't you just go into your own practice? But it's not that easy, And I'm proud of these women that I see from high school or that I used to work with. And sometimes they work just out of their house, basically. But they have bakeries, They make cookies, they make cakes, cupcakes. They use their cooking skills and they make a business for themselves, And I think that's amazing. I think that's fantastic. Because if you can be your own business person, if you can be an entrepreneur rather than working with a ball and chain for someone else who you have to be at their beck and call all the time, I'd rather be making cookies and making a living off of that. But I don't know how to cook well, I was not trained because I was raised as a boy, even though I identified as a girl. And boys really, I'm not going to say all boys, because there are lots of men that are chefs and they learned how to cook from their moms or their dads or both. Whereas I never got into that. I did take home ec in junior high school, I believe, where we learned basics of cooking and things like that. I even took industrial arts where we made lamps. We did ceramic trays. Those were fun times, Sometimes I wish I could just go back. I didn't have the worries that I have now, But if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't do it the same, There was a time when I was like 16 and I wanted to do surgery. I wanted to live as a female, but obviously I couldn't because we grew up in a whole different time. And living in Brooklyn and then Long Island, these things never were discussed. I didn't know anything about it. So I just had to kind of try to get through it myself. I didn't have any clue as to why I was wearing dresses or why I enjoyed it so much. All I know is I felt better. I felt happy, And then, my mom got sick over the years. My dad had injuries. He almost died a couple of times. And I told you about the Verrazano Bridge incident. For you who don't know, my dad was working on the bridge in the 60s, early 60s, and he was working with one of his partners, And unfortunately, after they finished their conversation, he heard his partner, who he was just speaking with, starting to scream. So my father looked in horror and saw his friend literally hanging off, trying to grab hold of the catwalk. And my dad immediately went to help him, but my dad is a lot smaller than his friend. And my dad also had surgery because he lost a couple of fingers and part of his thumb. So he didn't have the same strength that he normally would have with a full hand. So my dad is desperately reaching up to hold his buddy, his workmate, but he was too heavy. And then this other Canadian Indian worker from the reservation saw what was happening. He went and took my dad, pulled him back, but my dad couldn't hold on to his friend, and he saw him fall to his death into the waters below the bridge. And he had survivor's guilt for the rest of his life. And then obviously they closed the job site down. They had to do investigations. I don't remember how long that went on for. But that's when my father started drinking. And that's when everything kind of got crazy, And he'd have a couple of car accidents because he was under the influence. I'm not trying to say anything bad about my dad. I love my dad. He was a great father. But he had problems, and my mom had problems. I'm not making excuses. But we grew up in a dysfunctional family. My mom was suffering from depression. She had paranoid schizophrenia. My dad was struggling with depression. He got injured and banged up many times. He saw death in his business. His father fell and died not that long after. He was a paraplegic. His brother was working in the ironworking business, and then his wife's brother got him involved in auto mechanics, but then they had a disagreement. So then my father's brother, younger brother, went back into ironworkers union, and 3 weeks later he falls from a building, becomes a paraplegic, and dies 2 weeks after my mom had passed away. So my dad in 1990 had to go to 2 funerals. My mom's in March, and then his brother's, my uncle, in May of 1990. So it was a tough year, and it affected him, it affected us. Mom was in the hospital many times. Somehow my sisters got through it. I think they're more stronger than I am, maybe. And my dad, I was home with my dad, so I saw that he would just lock himself in his room and he would get drunk, and I didn't know what to do, it was sad, like I'm trying to, I was a very insecure person. I was extremely shy. I couldn't talk to anybody really. I couldn't talk to girls. The only thing that helped me when I was in high school, aside from being a good student and never having problems with the teachers, was I was very lucky that I got recruited for the cross-country team under the direction of Coach Al Bukowski, and I met many great runners. I met so many great runners. I would mention their names, but I don't know if they want me to. But they were awesome. They helped me. They encouraged me. They cheered me on. We were a team, and I never had that experience until years earlier when I was on the Little League baseball team. We were a team. We pulled for each other. We needed that. I needed that support. And Coach was like a mentor to me. My dad was all stressed out. He was drinking, depressed because my mom died, his wife. And I remember he used to play over and over the Sinead O'Connor song. I don't remember the title. I should, because I heard it so many times. But he would play that Sinead O'Connor song over and over and over again. It was like his mantra song while he's drinking himself to oblivion. And then I told my sister, look, I think Dad needs some help. So we got him into detox at Freeport. He was in and out of AA meetings. I mean, he would go to AA. He had a sponsor, and then he'd stop going to AA. And then we had to get him into a detox facility. And then after he went through detox, then we had to get him into a facility up in Providence, Rhode Island. It was near Brown University. And he was up there for like a month and a half. And we would go on the weekends to go visit and see how he was doing, and we'd call him on the telephone. And he seemed to be making progress. And then I was, when my mom died, I was 29. And then I was living still with my dad until I was 37, when I got married at 37. I still didn't have the confidence to find a place of my own. My wife was still working as a live-in in Sands Point for a very wealthy couple. We had some physical activities. She got pregnant. Matthew was born 9 months later. We was due in December 25th. We had a civil wedding in December of 1997. December 27th, 1997, we had a civil wedding. We went to a Greek restaurant for dinner. No honeymoon or anything like that. And she went back to working as a live-in. And then once she was expecting or getting near, we had to rechange our plans for a church wedding. We scheduled the church wedding originally in November of 1998, but knowing that she was going to give birth in December, we had to change. So we were lucky that we found Oceanside Knights of Columbus, and we were able to book a wedding on September 12th of 1998, 98, 08, 18, 28, what? 98, 90, right? 98, 08, 18, 19, 20, 19, yeah, like over 20 years. Yeah, because Matthew's 20, so 21 years if you count December. 20 years if you count September. And Matthew was born on December 8th, 1998, and the original due date was December 25th. He would have been a Christmas baby. But he was born in the Christmas time. So he was born December 8th, 1998. And we lived at my dad's house until we were able to find an apartment in someone's house in Levittown. So actually that was in 2001, the year of the terrorist attacks. And we were looking. We even found a nice housing complex out in Long Island, further out in Suffolk County towards Riverhead. That seemed promising, and we were interested. But we had to do the negotiations, and you know what date that was set at? unintentionally, but it was on September 11th, 2001. So with all the craziness going on, I said, I don't think we can do it right now. So I said, once everything settles, we'll get back in touch with you in a few months. And then my sisters helped us find an apartment in Levittown. I was 40. I had my wife, my son, and my mother-in-law, and we lived in a small apartment in an elderly man's house that he, converted half of the house into an apartment. So we had a kitchen, a little living room, a bathroom, and 2 bedrooms, basically. So that's where we lived, and, we really didn't have much room. And then after that, we moved to another area in Levittown, Primrose Lane, where we were living before. It was 47 Raspberry Lane, and now we live at 16 Primrose Lane. And we were looking at places, and I got involved in the first-time home buyers program, so we got a better discounted interest rate. I think I'm paying like 4%, but it's still 30 years, and that's a lot of money. And I had plans of making extra payments, and I was doing that when I was working, but when I lost my job, I had to stop that. And that's when I had to come off automatic payment and start paying when I had the money in the bank once I got approved. But that took a while, so I had to raid my retirement monies, literally clearing them all out, so we didn't wind up homeless in the streets with an autistic son. So it was terrible. And I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. After coming out, I made the decision to come out in March. Well, I started the process of transitioning in March of 2012. And I was apprehensive, but I suffered through my dad's suicide in 2009, the day after tax season, and I was still working at the CPA firm, and that was a horror. And my dad was involved with my son for 10 years, so my son was devastated when he finally found out. And then I had a good friend who helped me through my dad's suicide, and he was the first one to reach out to me, because everybody else didn't know what to say, what to do, so they kind of just stayed their distance. But my friend, who I used to go to his offices, he was one of the bookkeepers, and we had a professional relationship. That was when I was working at the CPA firm, and we became friends also. And he was really the only one where I was a professional accountant and he was the bookkeeper, where we actually went out to lunch, first and only. And then we became friends also. He'd introduced me to all these new music bands. He introduced me to Keen, Vampire Weekend, Trans-Siberian Orchestra, which was Sabotage. He introduced me to some really cool bands. Unfortunately, my friend who helped me cope with my dad's tragic suicide in 2009 died in 2011. And when I was working, I had stopped working at the CPA firm, and I took a job at one of their clients, a nuclear waste containment facility where they had operations in Long Island, Bohemia, Connecticut, Massachusetts, China, France, and India. And I even got to travel. I went to China and I went to France, and that was like my first time going to Europe and Asia, and my first time on a business trip like that. And then they also sent me to Connecticut and Boston, and they were planning to send me to India as well. But I had come out I was there from February of 2010, and I came out in August of 2012. And it didn't really go well. I was naive. I thought everything would work out, you know. So if I didn't, I hate doing this, but if I didn't transition, if I decided not to transition, if my father didn't die by suicide or whatever, and my friend didn't die, most likely I probably wouldn't have transitioned, even though knowing I was transgender. But who knows, you know, things happen. If I didn't transition, I might still be working there. But it's all water under the bridge now. I can't go back and change time. Like the Cher song, if I could turn back time, if I could turn back time. See, I can't sing, but I still like karaoke. But I couldn't change time, you know, I couldn't go back. So the CPA firm told them that they would place me in a new job, and we arranged that someone would come as my replacement from the CPA firm as well. And I believe she's still working there all these years, when I've been out of work 7 years now. And I took on that job with the doctor's office, and it was awful. That experience was awful. You know, even though I was working as a female, that part was fine. But the way I was treated, you know, they wanted me to like invent their whole accounting system when I was more like a follower than a leader. And now they wanted me to take initiative, and I'm shy. The owner doesn't want to even communicate with me. He doesn't even want me in business meetings, you know, so I'm doing what they introduced me to do. You know, I did it competently, professionally. They didn't even give me a phone until I was there like 3 months. So I couldn't even talk to people if I had questions. So I knew I was doomed right from the start. You know, I could read the handwriting on the wall. It was like a whole sham. They said, oh, we're going to embrace you. We gave sensitivity training to our employees. You're part of the family. Yet they had a newsletter when they introduced new employees. You think I got mentioned? Nothing. No picture, nothing. Yet they had all these other employees that were new. They had their picture, they had a profile, they had their educational experience. So, you know, I'm no idiot. So I knew I wasn't going to be there much longer. But what could I do? And then all of a sudden, she gets upset with me, the manager, when I had not yet finished a report that still had a 2-week time frame to complete and send in, which I had already a plan in place on how to do it. And when she saw that it was still on my desk and it wasn't done, she just freaked out on me. And she told me to go home and think about it. And I was so angry. I was so angry, but I handled myself with dignity, because now I'm living as a woman and I'm not going to go off on people. I'm going to handle it just like a woman would, professionally. But I was angry the way I was treated. And if I had the wherewithal and I had proof, I would have gone to an attorney to say I've been discriminated against. But how do you prove that? People say, why didn't you bring a lawsuit? You know, as if lawsuits are the magic cure-all, you know, and then lawsuits drag on. I wanted to make a lawsuit against Toyota in this recent car accident. But all these lawyers care about is how fucked up I was physically. They want to know that I went through the windshield, I severed my neck, I got all bloodied up, lost my arm. That's what they care about. They want the personal injuries. They want the big money. They don't give a shit about me having trauma. They don't care if my car got beaten up and it affected me up here. They don't care that it was possible mechanical failure. Oh, we don't handle those kinds of cases. We only handle cases where you really got screwed up physically, you know? Mentally doesn't count. If you lost your arm, you went through the windshield, we'll take the case. But if you're messed up here, no deal. So that's how they work. And also, if I needed an attorney, I'd have to work on a contingency basis anyway, because I can't give them upfront fees, don't have the money. So, in my life soap opera, my life has been good. It's been hard, sad, euphoria with the birth of my son and my wedding, tragic with my mom's death prematurely at 50 in 1990, tragic again with my cousin's suicide when his wife walked down on him, had an affair, and took the 3 kids, and he never got to see them again. So he went into his pickup truck, went to the glove compartment, took out his pistol, and he pointed it at his temple and pulled the trigger. His mom came home 10 minutes later, and to her horror, she saw her son slumped over the steering wheel, dead, blood all over the place. So we had just gone there to celebrate Christmas, my dad and I, for a week. It was when they had the Long Island Railroad shootings with that guy who went crazy on the train, and he went from car to car and he started shooting at people randomly. And I think the woman McCarthy, she lost her husband and I think her son, and then she became a politician to promote gun control. I don't remember the name of the guy who did it, but I know that was a big thing in the news. And we went to South Carolina, Spartansburg, drove down there, my dad and I, a few days after that tragedy. And when we went down there, that's basically what they were asking us about. Oh, you heard the shootings on the Long Island Railroad, you know? And then we didn't want to talk about it, you know, and then we went and we saw my aunt's doll collection. She had all these porcelain dolls. It was like amazing. And I was so impressed because I love porcelain dolls. I remember my mom used to have Hummels, and we used to have them, those figurines, and Precious Moments, So I love all that stuff. And Beanie Babies. Yeah. And Cabbage Patch Dolls. And we stayed at a hotel, but during the day we would go to visit my dad's sister, Aunt June. She's still alive, but she's in the hospital. And I remember, as if it was yesterday, we used to fold a sheet of paper, and it was like treated like a football, and you would like do that, and then it would go a distance, and then the other side would do the same. And I remember I was doing it with my cousin, the one who sadly committed suicide, and everything was great. He was happy, never knew this would ever happen. He was so friendly. He talked with the southern accent, Spartansburg, South Carolina. And everything seemed fine, you know. They even were working in, I love macaroni and cheese, you know. And they were actually telling us that they were working in the Stouffer's plant, where they literally had these shovels, like silver shovels. They would be wearing these protective clothing, and I guess protective shoes or whatever, where they would be literally in this macaroni and cheese, and they would be, I guess, I don't know, but it sounded weird that they're in the macaroni and cheese up to their waist, and I guess spooning it. I really didn't understand what they were saying, but they worked in the factory there where they made the Stouffer's macaroni and cheese. And for like a year after they told me that, I wouldn't eat it. But I love it so much that I don't even think about it anymore. But then 2 years later, he committed suicide. And then my dad took his life too in 2009. And I remember speaking to my friend, and he was so worried about me. And then I had to go to his funeral 2 years later, and I saw his baby girl and his beautiful wife, and I was devastated. I didn't know what to say. I was trying to console them, but they were consoling me. And the little girl was so cute. We used to like exchange gifts at Christmas time. I remember he bought my son a whole package of SpongeBob DVDs, and I remember I bought her like plush toys and coloring books and little girl dresses. And now I'm at his funeral, and it messed me up. I had to go out. I bought this little girl some clothes, toys, and I gave it to the funeral director because the mom was too busy with the arrangements for her husband's funeral and all that. And so I asked the funeral director to just see that she would get it, and he said no problem. And then I gave her a big hug and kiss because I didn't want to like distract her by giving her a bag, so that's why I gave it to the funeral director. I hugged her. I didn't even mention it, and I just said, I'm so sorry. If you need to talk to me, please call me. And she had my number, and I kissed the little girl on her head, and I just said, I'm sorry, you know. And she was too young to really understand. She just kept saying, why is Daddy sleeping? And that was so hard to deal with, you know. I guess the mom said, oh, Daddy's just sleeping, he's just gonna sleep. So it was sad. And then when I went home, I got messed up psychologically, and I had to reach out to a therapist. And I had gone to a therapist before. Actually, therapist way before was how I got introduced to Maria. But I'll leave that for another time. I might have mentioned it anyway. And then I told her, look, I'm struggling. You know, I have a wife, I have a son who's a teenager. I've been feeling very hurt. I lost 2 people. I lost my dad, and then I lost my friend. I lost my mom many years earlier. And I said to her, there's something else going on with me. I said I identify as a female. When I went to visit her the first time, I went in a suit and tie because I was still working. And I said I identify as a female. And the reason why I sought her out was she said one of her specialties was working within the LGBT community. So I also told her that I'm on hormones because I go to Callan Lord. I get my prescription meds. No, I'm a little confused here. No, my friend died in 2000. Oh, my dad died in 2009. Yeah, my friend died in 2011. I didn't start going on hormones until June of 2012. So I started seeing this therapist in roughly late 2011. So I haven't even started hormones yet. Or even started my transition. It was all discussion. Right? Yeah, it was discussion. And then I was trying to figure out a way how to discuss it with my employer at the time. And she gave me some pamphlets, you know, and then she had me come every week, once a week. And it wasn't covered under insurance. I had to pay like $70 a session. And then one day I came to the appointment and I had a dress on underneath. And I asked her, do you want to see how I love to dress? And she said, sure. So I went out into the other area, went to the ladies' room. I took off my suit and I had my dress on, and then I walked out, opened the door into her office. I sat down and she said, you look beautiful. And I knew right then that I had to transition. Not because I looked beautiful based on what she said, but because that's how I felt in here. I knew that I was not true to who I identified as. And it was scary. But I knew this all along, yet I married. I had a son. I have a son. I'm still married. I worked all my life as Edward. I was accepted as Edward. I had friendships based on being Edward. All my classmates from the past knew me as Edward. My dad knew me as Edward, even though he's long gone now. My friend who died knew me as Edward. And I said, look, I don't want to die without being true to who I am as a person. I lost my dad, 2009. I lost my best friend, 2011. My mom is gone. I'm gonna die one day. I have a son I love. I'm conflicted. But I can't go on living this anymore. I can't. It's 2011. I'm 50 years old. 61, 71, 81, 91, 01, 11. 50 years old. I wanted to transition in my 20s, my 30s, and then I got married, and I'm happy I got married, and I had a son, and it was not a charade. It wasn't like I was just trying to get married for the sake of being married. I got married because I loved my wife when I first met her. I was introduced by my psychologist, like I said. We hit it off, we went on dates. You know, she needed someone, I needed someone, so it just worked out that way. And then we had Matthew, and that was a blessing, you know. And I didn't get married to hurt her or Matthew or anyone when I decided to come out. I had to come out because I suffered some really bad tragedies. I was depressed, and I could no longer live the way I was living. I couldn't deal with the dresses underneath the suits anymore. I couldn't deal with wearing clothes that I never felt comfortable in. I couldn't deal with the fact that I identified up here as a female, but down there I knew I was a male. And I didn't want to die never being true to myself. I wanted to have at least 5 to 10 years of living as Emily. And then my therapist wanted me to get a mental evaluation, psychological evaluation. And she got worried about me when I said I can't go on like this, and if I have to, I'm just gonna kill myself. So she said, if you don't stop talking like that, I'm gonna call the ambulance and have you taken to the hospital. So I said, all right, I understand. And she knew that I had a problem, and she wanted to help me. And that's when everything just turned upside down, because I lost my job in the city they gave me 2 weeks. They said, we're going to allow you to work 2 weeks and we're going to pay you for the month, but we are going in a different direction. And I was like in shock. And I was only there for like 7 months. And I was so upset that I walked home from there. It was a good walk. It was about a good, almost an hour walk, just to try to figure out what I was going to do. And my son was having a bad night. He was having a lot of anxiety. He was having a bad meltdown. I couldn't sleep. I hardly got any kind of sleep at all. You know, and my son is now at this age, 98, 08, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15. Yeah, my son's 15 at this point, and he's having a hard time. Right? Is that right? 2011, 98, 08, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, he was like 15. And I was like freaked out, like, and then I went to the office. I knew I only had 2 weeks, and I was exhausted. And then I went to ask the practice manager a question, and as I'm walking over to her, I kind of went dizzy, and I fell, banged my head on the floor, and I was out cold. I guess it had to do with all the stress. So they had to get these guys to help pick me up and put me on a couch. And they put like wet towels on me. They kept calling my name. They said, Emily, Emily, Emily. And then I came to, and they gave me water, and they called 911, and I said, I gotta work. They said, no, you're going to the hospital. So then I was down on the lower level, like the basement level, so the paramedics and the police had to bring down the stretcher going down this narrow stairway. And then they tied me up to the stretcher. They lifted me up, all the guys, and they asked me if I was okay. And I said, I'm dizzy. And they asked me what my name is. I said, Emily. And I said, Emily, you're going to be okay. They picked up the stretcher and got me up because they didn't have an elevator. They were very delicate that they weren't going to drop me. And then I felt embarrassed because they had to take me out the main area where there are patients, the employees, you know, and I'm very distraught. I forgot my jacket even. My jacket was still there. And they brought me to come on. They brought me to one of the hospitals there, very popular hospital. My memory's shot. Well, I was taken to the hospital. Bellevue. They took me to Bellevue Hospital, and I was there for like 2 weeks. You know, I had to call friends because I was supposed to do their tax returns, because this was like the end of March, coming into April. I had to call my doctor friend because I did some bookkeeping for him. I had to call some other of my friends who I did tax returns for. And I said, I'm in the hospital, I'm not going to be able to do your taxes. And that's when my doctor friend said that you need to get on disability. And he put that idea in my head. He said, you need to get on disability. Luckily, I had him as a friend. I worked for him, but he was also my friend, and he still is today. So, I was there for 2 weeks, and then they diagnosed me finally with bipolar disorder at Bellevue. They had my wife and son come up, and they talked about my situation. My wife already knew that I was feminine, like I presented as a woman. So they also said that I'm transgender, I have bipolar disorder, depression, and suicide ideation, and they were concerned. They started to get me on these different kinds of medications. And then they said, we're gonna now find you a outpatient clinic to go to. called the office and I said, I'm going to be released. And I said, what should I do? Do you want me to come back? And they said, no, it's not necessary. We're going to pay you to the end of the month. And they didn't even wish me well. That's how mean they were. They were so cold. They said, no, don't come back. We'll pay you to the end of the month. Oh, by the way, your jacket's here. So we recommend you come and get it when you get a chance. That's how cold they were. And I hung up the phone because I was so upset with them. And one of the nurses said, are you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm just upset. And she said, you're going to be fine. And then once they got me set up with Mount Sinai, I had to go in for a intake interview. And when I spoke about everything and they got my medical records, they said, yeah, you need help. So they got me a psychiatrist and a therapist. And I started going there. I was introduced there. And then I was going to Callan Lord for my hormones. So I had the process starting, you know. I was on my way in my journey to become a woman, male to female, which is what I wanted ever since I was little. And I didn't do this to hurt anybody. I didn't do this because I'm selfish. I didn't do this for attention. Some of these people who think I am crazy because of what I did really upsets me, and they're not my friends. They may have been friends of mine, but when I came out, they just abandoned me, so that's no friend. What kind of a friend is that? If somebody I knew was having some difficulties, and they said they're gay, or they said they're transgender, you know, I would accept them. The only ones I wouldn't accept is if someone said, and I'm saying this jokingly, I mean jokingly, okay? So don't get like crazy. If someone said I'm a serial killer, then I would call the police. And I said, this guy's crazy, like he says he kills people. But if you're gay, bisexual, transgender, I have no problem with that. I wouldn't walk away. I'd embrace you. I'd accept you. Unfortunately, society's not like that. Even my friends who I thought were friends weren't like that. They're all ignorant. So I went to Mount Sinai. Had a good therapist who I stayed with for roughly 3 years until he had to move on, unfortunately. And he knew I was transgender. We went through the whole story, talked about my mom, my dad. I talked about my need to be feminine, wearing dresses, acting like a woman, my lifelong struggle with it. So he got it. The psychiatrist was more concerned about my medication for my bipolar disorder. And then the psychiatrist retired, and then I got introduced to another psychiatrist. And I had a temporary psychiatrist when I got approved into the intake. The only one that was consistent was my therapist. And towards the end of, before we were having to say goodbye because of his move, and I never asked him, I never even gave it a thought, but he just all of a sudden comes out because I told him I go to LGBT support groups. Oh, he recommended it. I said, get into LGBT support group, try to find transgender related support. He said, if you need to call me anytime, call me. And then all of a sudden he says, I know what you're going through because I'm a gay man. And I was like, oh, I didn't expect that. But I had no problem with that. I just never gave it a thought, you know? Well, it was weird because I used to like say, I never asked him, but I never saw like pictures of his wife or any of his children, but I didn't think it was any of my business to know because I went to other doctors' offices and they have like, if it's a woman psychiatrist, she has a picture of her husband and her children. The one that I was going to had 2 girls with a husband. And usually when I go to a doctor's office, a male doctor, he has a picture of his wife and children. But I didn't see that with my therapist. But I didn't jump to conclusions or anything. But when he told me, I still was taken off guard. But I embraced him. I didn't like say, oh God, you're gay. I accepted him just like he accepted me as transgender. And that's how I will be with anybody, you know. But I was sad because I enjoyed talking to him. You know, I opened up. I told him everything, you know, and then at the end, because he considered me kind of unstable, that I was in the hospital many times, that I threatened suicide many times. So he wasn't yet willing to write me the letter for approving me for surgery, for male to female transgender surgery. But in the very end, he kept his word when he saw that I was stable, and he wrote this long letter, like a 3-page letter signed by him and the psychiatrist. And it said that I have bipolar disorder, that I'm going through depression because I'm not working anymore, and I was a professional CPA, and that I'm dependent on disability income, which he helped me get too. My doctor friend gave me the idea, and then he helped me, my therapist helped me do all the paperwork. Then I had an attorney that did the paperwork for my Social Security disability. Sullivan and Kehoe, my attorneys, helped me get the Social Security disability on my first try. And my therapist helped me get my long-term disability. We went through the paperwork because they needed him and my psychiatrist's writings and assessments and diagnosis and medical reports. And after we gone through that, I got accepted for both due to my law firm, Sullivan and Kehoe, and my therapist, who got me on the long-term disability. And I still remember his name, Dr. Steven Schneider. Nice man. And then I had to find a new place because I had to move on. But he did tell me that Mount Sinai was developing a program for transgender patients, and they were going to be doing medical surgeries, male to female transgender surgeries. So they gave me a contact person to get in touch with because he knew I wanted to do the surgery. And I made several calls, kept leaving messages, getting frustrated, and I'm going to Callan Lord for my hormones, and then referred to Callan Lord also for my therapy and psychiatry. So I went from Mount Sinai psychiatry and therapy to Callan Lord psychiatry and therapy, in addition to my hormones, the estrogen for my feminine transition, and testosterone blockers to suppress the testosterone that's typical for males. And then I did electrolysis. I let my hair grow out, and I wore dresses, and I look like a woman, and that's how I live as a woman since September of 2012. I started my therapy at Mount Sinai in March of 2013 when I lost my job, or April, or maybe May. And then we did all that paperwork, and then I was seeing him for 3 years roughly, so 2013, 14, 15, 16. And then I was entrenched with Mount Sinai now, because I had to leave Callan-Ward for therapy because they only accepted Medicare. They thought my Medicare was my primary, but it was secondary. It was actually my wife's that was primary, but they don't take private insurance. So now I had to find another psychiatrist and therapist. So I found a psychiatrist, but I went on a waiting list for a therapist at Mount Sinai. And my psychiatrist, who I like, his name is Dr. Max Lichtenstein. And, he knew my story. He got all the medical records. He knew I was transgender. He knew I wanted to do the surgery. So initially we planned that I would go see Dr. Jess Ting and discuss the surgery. And originally they had scheduled my surgery for October of 2017. And he was nice. He asked me a whole bunch of questions. Then he examined my penis and he tried to figure out how they could, invert it and create the vagina with the proper depth. And he said he could work with it, and they took pictures. He wore a glove. He had to physically check it out, but I was fine with that. It wasn't he's a medical doctor, this is what they do, especially for transgender male to female patients. So we had a date set, and then in August of 2017, my son and I had something between us. He was getting out of control, and I was trying to contain him, and then he ran out of the house, and I kept screaming, "Matthew, please, Matthew, stop this, come home now." And then, I was screaming at the top of my lungs because I didn't want to lose him. We've had this problem other times where he goes off and it's nighttime, and I messed up my knees because I tripped trying to run after and catching up with him. And I just started screaming because I couldn't find him. And then I went and took a wrong turn, and I didn't realize that he had already come back home. And I'm still frantically looking for him. And then a neighbor calls and said there's someone in the neighborhood yelling and screaming. So before I knew it, there were police chasing me down. And I'm saying, "I'm looking for my son." And they said, "Where do you live?" And I told them my address. And they saw my son was with my wife, and they said, "Your son is home." And I said, and they said, "What is going on? Why are you screaming?" And I said, "Because I'm looking for my son." But they said, "He's home." So they didn't believe me. They're questioning me as if I'm going cuckoo or something. And then I started running away from the cops. Biggest mistake. Because once I ran away, and then I darted into traffic, and there was a car coming, and I ran right in front of the car, I didn't give a shit anymore. And that's when they started chasing me, and they knocked me down, and they put this needle in me, and all I remember was I was waked up in the hospital. I had no recollection of them putting me in the ambulance and taking me to the hospital. Once they gave me that needle, I was out for the count. And then I got aggressive in the hospital. I was screaming. I said, "Get me out of here. I gotta get out of here." And then they gave me another needle to calm me down. And then my surgeon found out. I was there for like 2 weeks, and they notified him, and they postponed my surgery. And I then was supposed to have surgery like 6 months later. So October, November, December, January, February, March. I was supposed to then have surgery April of 2018, and then I wound up in the hospital again. And then they had to postpone the surgery again. And then I then was supposed to go another 6 months and wait to do the surgery, and I think I threatened suicide, and I wound up taken to the hospital, and then they postponed it again. So I thought, I'm never gonna have this surgery. It's just never gonna happen. And then Father's Day of I was seeing Dr. Purohit, because the one that I had just had to have postponed, I was supposed to have it with Dr. Jess Ting, Dr. Purohit, and Dr. Marcy Bowers, like the superstars of male to female transgender surgery. And Marcy Bowers is also a male to female transgender woman and a brilliant surgeon, medical doctor. And I was supposed to have that surgery in 2018. I think it was around June of 2018. And I guess it was like not that far from Father's Day. And my son all of a sudden said, "I miss my dad. I'm so depressed. Why did you kill my dad? Emily, you killed my dad." And I was so guilty. I felt like so horrible, like I was a horrible person, that I was only thinking of myself and not thinking of my poor son. So I, in my mind, said, how do I rectify this? So I decided, without really talking to anybody, I didn't even call my psychiatrist, I just decided that I was going to go to my hairstylist, and I said, "Give me a haircut, cut it off." And when she did, she said, "Are you sure?" She even said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" In retrospect, I should have said, "No, I don't want to do this." But I gave her the thumbs up. So she cut my hair. It took me a long time to grow my hair. I had hair down to here, my shoulders. And then when I looked in the mirror, and she said, "Oh, we got to color your hair because you got all clumps of blonde and brown." Because you couldn't see that because I had a long amount of hair. So then she had it cut just like when I used to get boy haircuts. Very trimmed down here, no hair over the ears. And I was devastated, but I didn't let on about it, but I was heartbroken. And then she dyed my hair brown. And then I looked in the mirror and I said, I don't even recognize myself anymore. I was so depressed. I wanted to die. I was so sick. But I tried to do the right thing for my son, because I love my son and I would never want to hurt him. And I thought, I'm a very naive person, because I thought this would make things better. But in fact, it made it worse. For a 57, 58-year-old, I'm pretty immature. I haven't had much life experience. My wife was my one and only. I never had sex before I was 37. I couldn't even talk to girls. I even had trouble talking to my classmates and also my running mates in cross country. I had a few friends that I talked to, but I was very shy. But they kind of brought me out of myself. And at 57, 58, I was still shy and insecure and naive. And I didn't really grow up, you know. I felt like I was very immature for my age. But I worked hard, I was dedicated, I was devoted, I was loyal, and I just wanted to do my best. I wanted to be a good person, I wanted to be happy, and I was tired of hiding. I couldn't live like this anymore. I couldn't wear dresses underneath men's clothes and pretend everything was fine, because it wasn't. I was miserable. So when I detransitioned and I had short hair, I had to start going back and wearing men's clothes. I couldn't even wear my dress anymore because I looked so, it didn't look right. I have boy's haircut. I look more like a guy now, even though now you see me, I look more like a female. But now I was more like a guy again. All the hormones and all of the growing of my hair and all of the dyeing of it to be blonde and being happy because I finally felt like a woman, and then all of a sudden to take that all away with a haircut, and then now having to go to Walmart and buy baggy shirts because I have breasts now and I had to cover them because I wasn't gonna bind them like trans men do. Why would I want to have breasts and then all of a sudden bind them? I understand why trans men do that, but not trans women. So for 2 weeks I had to live as a guy. I had to wear baggy shirts and pants I hated. I could no longer wear my dresses. And I was so depressed. And my son said, "Daddy, you look so sad." And I just said, "I'm trying, my son. I'm trying my hardest to help you and to be good to you and to be the best father that I can be." And he said to me that, "You don't look happy." So he said, "Why don't you just be who you are?" My son, he seemed more mature than I did, because he said, "Dad, it doesn't matter. You don't have to cut your hair. You are who you are." And I cried, because my son is giving me advice instead of me giving him advice, And he didn't ask me to get my hair cut. I just thought that was the right thing because he kept saying, "I miss my dad. I miss my dad. It's not the same anymore." So I took it to heart, and that's why I changed my appearance again. And then he said, "I don't want you to be unhappy." So he's one of my biggest supporters. He calls me Emily all the time. And sometimes I say, "Maddie, you can call me Dad." And he does, but when we're out in public, he calls me Auntie Emily. I love my son and I would never want to hurt him. And even though I don't have the best relationship with my wife, I would never want to hurt her either. Or anyone for that matter. So, after that 2 weeks, I spoke to my psychiatrist and he said, if you need to go back to how you are supposed to be. I told him, "But I can't do surgery now." And he said, "Don't worry, surgery will come, Just, okay, so you're not ready now. We understand. We'll talk to the surgeon and we'll reschedule it." And I said, "I really appreciate that." And then I started the process of getting my hair back to blonde and growing it out. And I'm pretty happy now with the results. I have a wonderful hairstylist. She helps me. She doesn't even charge me full price. She gives me discounts. She gives me free shampoos. And I said, I don't want to get you in trouble or anything. She said, don't worry about it. And I said, I mean it. I don't want to get you. So she gives me these discounts. So I make it up to her in a tip, you know. So I give her like a $15 or $20 tip because she's doing me a big favor. So now, back to what I was trying to say in the beginning of my video before I went on this tirade about my whole life and my experiences. I have a date set for my surgery. I got a call today that my insurance approved the surgery, and it's scheduled for September 10th of 2019. And the doctors are fine. They think I'm okay. They know I was in a car accident. They know I was traumatized. But they saying I'm a strong person. I'm a survivor. I've been waiting for this for a long time. This is my 5th attempt. And they're compassionate. And they know that I want to live as a woman. And I'm not getting the surgery so I can have sex with men. I'm getting the surgery so I can feel whole and complete as a woman. I don't care if I ever have sex. I'm doing this because I know I'm a woman. And if my wife and I, which I would never want to happen, but if Matthew's placed in a group home and my wife says we're going to go our separate ways, or she's going to say I'm going to take Matthew and I'm going to the Philippines, it's going to be hard on me, you know, because I want to see my son, you know, and I do care about my wife. So I hope that's not going to happen. But if it does, I'm not looking for anybody, you know. I'm just trying to live the way I feel comfortable, you know. And if, because I would never betray my wife, but if something happened and if some guy showed interest, maybe I might explore it. I'm not saying that I would, but now that I have an anatomy consistent to a woman, without a reproductive system, without a uterus, without ovaries, at least I still look like a woman physically, but I wouldn't do it for that reason. But I'm excited, nervous, been waiting for this since I was 16, and now I have a date, Mount Sinai, September 10th, 2019, male to female, transgender bottom surgery, vaginoplasty, Dr. Rajveer Purohit of Mount Sinai, I think a Russian surgeon who's very expert at male to female transgender surgery, nurses, and maybe another prominent doctor. And they haven't yet, they still have to complete the laser in the private area. And they still need to give me a workup to see if I'm medically cleared to do the surgery. I'm going to probably have to lose like 15 or 20 pounds between now and that date. And then I'm going to recover maybe over a 2 to 3 month period. So I doubt I'm going to be able to go to the 40-year high school reunion. I would like to, but I don't think it's going to happen. So there we have it. And I'm approaching the 2-hour mark. So my videos are pretty long now. I can't believe it. So that's it. I'm getting the surgery September 10th. I'm worried about my son now in transportation, but I'm in touch with all of his workers that are helping him with his, say, autistic situation. I already informed them, so we're all on board, and that's it. So I'm going to follow up as the surgery date gets closer, and then after surgery, when I'm recovering, I'll try to do some videos. No pictures, nothing like down there, nothing. Just gonna explain what's going on, and hopefully it'll be successful. This is Emily Iannielli, T-Girl Angel, saying goodbye, and I love you.